Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Hamas frees 3 more hostages. Israel releases hundreds of prisoners in return. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy calls for creation of armed forces of Europe amid fears of reduction in US support. UN chief warns against regional war over Democratic Republic of Congo at Africa summit. EU says urgently considering all options in response to the fighting in Congo. And White House bans Associated Press from accessing Oval Office and Air Force One over Gulf of Mexico dispute. First updates from West Asia. It is indeed a day of wrenching emotions, relief, joy, anger and trauma all poured out as Hamas released 3 Israeli hostages in exchange of 369 Palestinian prisoners from Israel's custody. Ayushi Bhatnagar has more on this.
An emotional sight, eyes filled with grief and relief, anger and joy, cheering and clapping as friends and families of Israeli hostages watched with bated breath as live streaming on TV channels showed them being released from Hamas's captivity. Hamas on Saturday released 3 hostages in an exchange of 369 Palestinian prisoners from Israel custody under the ongoing truce deal. The freed captives were handed over to the Red Cross in Gaza on Saturday. Israeli-American Sergei Dekel-Chen, Israeli-Russian Shasha Trupanov, and Israeli-Argentinian Yair Horn were taken on a stage in the southern Gazan city of Khan Yunis, where they were asked to address the crowd before their handover to the Red Cross. Meanwhile, the first bus carrying freed Palestinian prisoners and detainees departed from Israeli jail Offer in the West Bank. Clutching gift bags were given to the hostages and a certificate to mark the end of their captivity. The release, the 6th since the truce took effect on January 19th, came after last week's uncertainty when both Israel and Hamas traded accusations of violating the January 19th ceasefire. For some, it is just news. But back in Tel Aviv, it is no less than a festival filled with hope and accomplishment. Israelis were seen celebrating in the hostages square, with many carrying Israeli flags and posters in support of the captives. With the latest swap, returned Hamas hostage Keith Siegel recounts his 484 days of captivity, wherein he says he was starved and tortured and was made to live under unimaginable conditions.
I was held for 484 days in unimaginable conditions. When I was in Gaza, I lived in constant fear for my life and for my personal safety. I was starved and I was tortured, both physically and emotionally.
Each release has brought a wave of relief, but also frustration and sadness for the dozens of people. Families patiently await their reunion with the 3 of the released hostages held for months. The reunion will be filled with mixed emotions, with some being nervous and excited at the same time. Ayushi Bhatnagar's report, DD India.
Saudi Arabia will host the leaders of 4 Arab countries at a summit on February 20th to discuss US President Donald Trump's proposal for a US takeover of Gaza. The leaders of Egypt, Jordan, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates will attend the summit to take place ahead of an Arab League meeting in Cairo 1 week later on the same issue. Donald Trump sparked a global outcry with his proposal for the United States to take over the Gaza Strip and to move more than 2 million Palestinians out of the territory, citing Egypt or Jordan as possible destinations. Trump made the proposal during a visit by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to Washington. Arab countries have come together in a rare united front, outraged by the idea of displacing the Palestinians en masse. On to Europe. Leaders on Saturday arrived for a second day of the annual Munich Security Conference, with talks set to focus on the conflict in Ukraine. Saturday's meetings are likely to be concerned with the aftermath of a speech by US Vice President J.D. Vance, who accused European leaders on Friday of censoring free speech and failing to control immigration, overshadowing discussions on the conflict in Ukraine. DD India's Yash Chaturvedi reports.
A key focus at the conference is the Ukraine war, with EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas calling for a meeting of European leaders on Sunday to discuss relations with the Trump administration in the context of the ongoing conflict. On the sidelines of the conference, US Vice President J.D. Vance met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, but his speech largely avoided mentioning Russia or Ukraine. Instead, Vance criticized European leaders over issues of free speech and immigration. He emphasized the need for a durable and lasting peace in Eastern Europe rather than a short-term resolution. However, no critical minerals deal was announced, a key component of Ukraine's strategy to secure US support.
We want the war to come to a close. We want the killing to stop, but we want to achieve a durable, lasting peace, not the kind of peace that's going to have Eastern Europe in conflict just a couple years down the road.
Meanwhile, Zelenskyy also met with EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen following a phone conversation between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, where Trump suggested Ukraine could neither reclaim all its territory nor join NATO. Beyond the Ukraine conflict, the conference also saw a significant diplomatic exchange from Chinese side as well. As the Munich Security Conference continues, discussions on Ukraine, US-Europe relations, and China's role in global diplomacy remain at the forefront of international security dialogue. Bureau Report, DD India.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has said that Ukraine would never accept any peace deals reached behind its back or without Kiev's involvement, an implicit message to US President Donald Trump as he strives to end the war with Russia. In a speech to the Munich Security Conference, Zelenskyy also called on Europe to create its own armed forces, urging the continent's leaders to decide their own future, saying Ukraine's armed forces alone were not enough for their security.
I really believe that time has come. The armed forces of Europe must be created. Without Ukraine's army, Europe's armies will not be enough to stop Russia. It's reality for today. Only our army in Europe has real, modern battlefield experience. But our army alone is not enough too. And we need what you can provide: weapons, training, sanctions, financing, political pressure, and unity.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz met with Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference on Saturday. The two men met on the sidelines of the summit 3 days after the Armenian government pushed through the parliament a bill calling for Armenia's eventual membership in the EU. Meanwhile, Germany and Armenia have strong diplomatic and economic ties and work together on development cooperation. Updates from Democratic Republic of Congo now. M23 rebels have entered Bukavu, the eastern region's second largest city, on Friday. The leader of Congo River Alliance, which includes M23 rebels, said the M23 rebels would continue their advance on Saturday. The rebels have been trying to push south towards Bukavu since they seized Goma, the largest city in eastern Congo, at the end of last month. The capture of Bukavu would represent an unprecedented expansion of territory under the M23's control since the latest insurgency started in 2022. The Rwandan-backed militants' progress comes despite international calls for a ceasefire and a resumption of peace talks. South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio held their first meeting in Munich on Saturday on the sidelines of the annual security conference. The two had been expected to discuss their alliance, North Korea's nuclear program, and a trilateral cooperation with Japan, according to South Korean ministry. After Munich, Rubio will travel to Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, the State Department said. On the first leg of his West Asia visit, Rubio will arrive Israel late on Saturday. The US Secretary of State is expected to hold talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the Gaza truce. According to State Department, Rubio's engagements with senior Israeli officials will promote US interests in advancing regional cooperation, stability and peace. Rubio's visit will center on freeing American and all other hostages from Hamas's captivity and advancing to phase 2 of the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. Meanwhile, the chief of Uganda's defense forces has said that he would attack the town of Bunia in eastern Congo unless all forces there surrendered their arms within 24 hours. The chief, who has a history of posting provocative comments on foreign policy, said that he had the authority of President Yoweri Museveni, who is also his father. A spokesman for Uganda's military, however, said that he could not comment on the matter. The escalating conflict in Democratic Republic of Congo is set to dominate the African Union summit, which began on Saturday with the DRC president absent after Rwandan-backed forces seized a second major city on its territory. The 55-nation body is meeting in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, as Africa faces devastating conflicts in the DRC and Sudan as well as US President Donald Trump's cuts to the US development aid, which have hit the continent hard. With the specter of a regional conflagration rising in eastern DRC and international bodies increasingly sounding the alarm, the African Union has been criticized for its timid approach, and observers have demanded more decisive action. East and Southern African leaders on February 8th called for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire within 5 days, but fresh fighting erupted on Tuesday. At the summit, UN Chief Antonio Guterres said that the Democratic Republic of Congo's territorial integrity must be respected and regional escalation avoided.
The Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Congolese people have been suffering yet again from a brutal cycle of violence. And the fighting that is raging in South Kivu as a result of the continuation of the M23 offensive threatens to push the entire region over the precipice. Regional escalation must be avoided at all costs. There is no military solution. The deadlock must end, the dialogue must begin, and the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the DRC must be respected.
The European Union, on its part, announced on Saturday that it is urgently considering all options in response to a widening rebel offensive in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The European Parliament on Thursday urged the European Union to freeze direct budget support for Rwanda until it breaks links with Tutsi-led M23 rebels and allows humanitarian access to areas of the Democratic Republic of Congo where they advanced. Following the latest developments in the east of the country, the European Union stands ready to boost emergency assistance, particularly for the newly displaced populations in and around capital Goma. On to the US now. Protests broke out in New York after the word transgender was removed from the US National Park Service website of a monument to the 1969 Stonewall riots, a foundational moment in the struggle for LGBTQ rights. It comes as US President Donald Trump's transgender policy began with a Day 1 executive order delegitimizing gender identity. The monument's website was altered on Friday, changing the widely used LGBTQ acronym to LGB throughout the website. All references to transgender or queer community were also erased. Several hundred people carried signs bearing slogans, "Transhumans are the symbol of American freedom," as they rallied in New York City against the move.
Just wanted to be included. We wanted equality. It's not some strange question of whether or not we exist. It's whether or not they want us to, and they don't get to decide. It's just not up to them.
The United States Army has officially announced that it will no longer allow transgender people to join the military and will stop facilitating procedures related to gender transformation for service members. In a statement shared on X, the US Army said that the decision takes effect immediately and all new accessions for people with a history of gender dysphoria are stopped and all medical procedures related to facilitating or affirming a gender transition for service members have been paused. This comes after President Donald Trump signed an executive order banning transgender ideology and invented pronouns in the troops as part of his set of sweeping actions after his return to the White House. The operator of Japan's Fukushima nuclear power plant began the process of dismantling treated radioactive water storage tanks to clear space needed to store nuclear fuel debris to be extracted from the reactors. This step is a milestone of a sort as Tokyo Electric Power Company TEPCO moves ahead with a decade-long project to dismantle the entire plant in northern Japan, which went into meltdown after it was hit by a catastrophic tsunami in 2011. Since the accident, TEPCO has stored around 1.3 million tons of water at the site, along with water used for cooling the reactors. The water is filtered to remove various radioactive materials but has remained inside more than 1,000 tanks that occupy much of the plant's ground. After removing the tanks, the utility plans to build facilities to store highly dangerous molten fuel debris to be extracted from inside of the reactors. Scrapping the water tanks became possible after TEPCO began releasing the stored water from the plant into the Pacific Ocean in August 2023. You're watching DD India Live, still to come on the show. UN climate chief calls India a solar superpower, lauds Delhi's efforts to mitigate climate change. India becomes the second largest country in fish production with around 8% share in global fish production. And world number one tennis player Yannick Sinner accepts 3-month ban in doping settlement.
Clean energy is the future for sure. We are still not able to produce enough energy through renewable sources yet. But why is it so, and how can we change that?
We introduced solar-powered street lights, cutting consumption by 5%. Then I had the government build green homes fitted with solar panels, making us more energy independent.
The panels contain a lot of rare commodities, and you can save a lot of energy if you use recycled materials.
We run off hydropower or wind power, so the electricity we have is sustainable and renewable. So of course that's the most sustainable we can do.
When it transforms and translates into results that is tangible, they can see the difference that it makes to their environment. It's a huge thing.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I am Tanvi Taneja. The White House on Friday indefinitely blocked Associated Press AP journalists from accessing the Oval Office and Air Force One. The news agency was singled out amid a growing standoff between Trump administration and the news agency over the use of words Gulf of Mexico. Earlier in January, the US President announced to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and the change was taken effect at government agencies. However, the new name has not been recognized by other nations. The Associated Press still refers to it as the Gulf of Mexico. The White House banned the reporters of news agency from attending presidential events, but photographers working for the Associated Press were permitted to attend the events. UN Climate Chief Simon Steele, who is in India to attend the ET Global Business Summit, lauded India's efforts to mitigate climate change. Climate Chief Steele has called India a solar superpower and urged it to develop an ambitious climate plan covering its entire economy. The Climate Chief exhorted India to accelerate the pace of deployment of new and clean energy for a higher economic growth. Over the past 2 decades, India's fisheries sector has witnessed significant growth and transformation. India is the second largest fish producing country with around 8% share in global fish production. From technological advancements to policy reforms, the period 2004 to 2024 has been marked by milestones that have bolstered India's position in global fisheries and aquaculture. The Union Budget 2025-26 proposed the highest ever total annual budgetary support for the fisheries sector. This is a testament to India's achievement as a leader in aquaculture and seafood exports. Motivational speaker and founder of Isha Foundation, Sadguru Jaggi Vasudev, on Saturday interacted with students in the 8th edition of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Pariksha Pe Charcha program. While speaking with students, Sadguru said that a textbook is not a challenge for your intelligence, no matter who you are.
Education is not about examination. Examination is just an evaluation to see whether you're fit enough to go to the next step or not. And education is about giving you access to life. What I'm telling you is, you must keep your intelligence in a dynamic mode. Doesn't matter what it is, because education is about giving you fundamentals which will give you access to life.
Sadguru also said that everybody can sparkle and do things that others cannot imagine.
Everybody can sparkle and do things that others cannot imagine. Everybody. Only thing is, because there is no striving, that sparkle doesn't happen. But recent studies have shown when people become very meditative, with Shambhavi, lot of studies have been done, you must look it up. With Shambhavi Mahamudra, they see large part of the brain is lit up. Not any particular thing, large part of the brain. This needs to happen, that everything is lit up. What you use is up to you. See, intelligence is not about usefulness. Intelligence creates profoundness of experience of life. The more you activate your intelligence, the more access you have into everything that you see.
And next, all the latest from the Maha Kumbh, the largest religious congregation in the world. Around 15,000 sanitation workers strive to create a world record today by participating in the largest synchronized sweeping drive at the ongoing Maha Kumbh Mela in Uttar Pradesh's Prayagraj. This comes on the backdrop of 2 remarkable world records created at the Maha Kumbh on Friday. First, by becoming the largest event globally with over 500 million direct participants. The second is setting up a new benchmark for the largest ever synchronized river cleaning campaign. The initiative aims to highlight the core values of Maha Kumbh by promoting cleanliness and environmental conservation while strengthening the message of collective responsibility to preserve the sanctity of key sites. And on to some sporting action now. World number 1 tennis player Yannick Sinner has accepted a 3-month doping ban. The World Anti-Doping Agency said that they had reached a settlement on his period of suspension. Sinner's ban began on February 9th and will end on May 4th, while he can return to training on April 13th. This means Sinner will be free to play the French Open, which begins on May 25th. Sinner, who successfully defended his Australian Open crown last month, had tested positive for a banned substance which he said had entered his system from a member of his support team through massages and sports therapy. WADA said in a statement that Sinner did not intend to cheat and that his exposure to clostebol did not provide any performance-enhancing benefit and took place without his knowledge. Indian cricketers and support staff left for Dubai on Saturday to compete in the upcoming Champions Trophy. Several key players were spotted at the airport, including star batter Virat Kohli, all-rounders Ravindra Jadeja, Washington Sundar, wicket-keeper batters Rishabh Pant, KL Rahul and spinners Kuldeep Yadav and Varun Chakravarti. Middle order batter Shreyas Iyer, all-rounder Akshar Patel and pacers Harshit Rana and Arshdeep Singh were also part of the travelling contingent. Skipper Rohit Sharma also joined the team. Hardik Pandya was the last to join the squad before departure. India will kick off their campaign against Bangladesh on February 20th. And next, we take you to Japan, where a giant panda got Valentine's Day's gifts in western Japanese town of Shirahama. Heart-shaped ice sculptures were among the Valentine's Day's gifts presented to Fuhin, a 4-year-old female who lives at a zoo in Wakayama Prefecture. This facility has been giving such gifts to giant pandas every year. That's all for this edition of DD India Live. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live, and you can also download our DD India mobile app for quick news and updates on the go. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.